My daughter-in-law thought I was gone at church when she tried to move me out of my own home. She didn't know the doorbell camera was recording. That night, I pressed play in front of my son, and the room went silent. Every word was there. Before I share what happened, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Elaine Porter. I am 66 years old, a widow, and I live in the house my late husband and I built together. Every wall, every room, carries memories of our life. To me, this house is not just bricks and wood. It is where I raised my son, Michael. It is where my husband and I built a family and a future. Michael is 38 now. He is hardworking and has always been my pride. He married Rachel 10 years ago, and they have a son named Jacob, who is 12. Jacob is the joy of my life. He visits me often, helps me in the garden, and listens to the same family stories Rachel usually rolls her eyes at. To Jacob, I am just grandma, and that means more to me than anything. But my relationship with Rachel has never been easy. On the outside, she is polite. At family gatherings, she smiles and makes small talk. But underneath, there is a sharpness in her words. I hear it when she suggests that I should think about downsizing, or when she comments that keeping up this old house must be too much for you. I pretend not to notice, but each remark lands like a pebble dropped in water, slowly rippling into something larger. Despite her attitude, I never caused trouble. I thought keeping the peace meant staying quiet. I told myself that as long as I had Jacob's hugs and Michael's love, I could handle Rachel's coldness. I focused on my routine, keeping my garden alive, attending church every Sunday, and taking comfort in the traditions that had carried me through years of both joy and grief. Still, deep down, I often felt like I was slowly being pushed out of my own family's circle. It was not always what Rachel said, but how she said it, her tone, her sighs, the way she looked at me as if I was standing in the way. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was imagining things, that perhaps I was being too sensitive. I didn't realize how far she would go until the day the doorbell camera revealed the truth. That Sunday started like any other. I dressed in my usual church outfit, a navy skirt and white blouse my husband always liked, and I walked down the street to the little church I had attended for decades. The service was warm and familiar, filled with hymns I knew by heart. I stayed behind for a few minutes after to talk with friends, then made my way home with the calm, steady rhythm of Sunday still in my heart. When I got inside, I made a cup of tea and sat down at the kitchen table. As I reached for my phone, I saw a notification from my doorbell camera. It was nothing unusual at first. I often got alerts when delivery drivers dropped packages or when Jacob came running up to surprise me. But this one was different. It was a motion alert from just a few hours earlier, right after I had left for church. Curious, I pressed play. At first, I heard the faint shuffle of footsteps, then the sound of my daughter-in-law's voice. Clear, sharp, unmistakable. She's gone. Bring everything. Start with the boxes in the living room. My heart stopped. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, unable to believe what I was hearing. In the background, I could make out the voices of men, movers perhaps, asking where to start. And then Rachel again, her voice more commanding this time. Hurry! We don't have long. I sat frozen in my chair, my tea untouched, my hands trembling. I replayed the clip once, twice, 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood. But there was no mistake. My daughter-in-law had stood at my front door and ordered strangers to carry away my things while I was at church. The betrayal cut through me like a knife. My mind raced with questions. Did Michael know? Was he part of this plan? Or was Rachel doing this behind his back? The idea that my son could be complicit nearly broke me. Yet I couldn't ignore the possibility. I pushed back from the table and began pacing the kitchen. This was my home, the home where I had raised Michael, where my husband and I had shared nearly 4 decades of love and life. And now, Rachel wanted to erase me from it, as if I was just an obstacle in her way. The panic settled heavy in my chest. My house was not just property. It was the last piece of my husband I had left. His tools still sat in the garage. His chair still rested by the window where he used to read the newspaper every morning. To think that she would throw all of that away while I was kneeling in prayer at church, it was more than cruelty. It was theft of my memories, of my dignity. I sat down again, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to march straight to Rachel's house, to bang on the door, to demand answers. But another part of me held back. If I confronted her directly, she would twist it, just as she always did. She would call me dramatic. She would claim I misheard. She might even convince Michael that I was exaggerating. I had been silent for too long, letting her small insults slide, convincing myself it was better not to cause trouble. And here was the result. She thought she could push me out completely, right under my nose. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered out loud, "What am I supposed to do, Robert?" It was my husband's name, and though he was gone, I often spoke to him when I needed strength. In that quiet kitchen, I almost felt as though he was telling me to be still, to hold on, to let the truth speak for itself. I replayed the video again, this time listening all the way through. Every word was crystal clear. The camera had caught her instruction, her tone, even the sound of boxes being shuffled. It was undeniable. Still, fear gnawed at me. If I showed Michael, what if he defended her? What if he said it was taken out of context? What if, worst of all, he had known all along? I spent the rest of the afternoon walking through my house, touching the walls, the picture frames, the furniture. Everything I passed carried a memory. I thought of Jacob running through the hallway with his toy cars, of Michael as a little boy sitting on the back porch, of my husband and me dancing slowly in the living room late at night when no one else was watching. This house was not just mine, it was our family's history, and I knew then I couldn't let Rachel erase it. By the time the sun began to set, my fear had started to harden into something else, a quiet, steady resolve. I didn't need to scream or argue. I didn't need to fight with Rachel's lies. I had something stronger than words, proof. The doorbell camera had given me a weapon I never expected, and with it, I would defend not just my home, but my place in this family. That night, when Michael came home, I would press play. As evening settled over the neighborhood, I sat in my living room with the doorbell footage saved carefully on my phone. The house was quiet, but my heart was not. It pounded with a steady rhythm, each beat a reminder that tonight I had to choose. Stay silent and let Rachel's betrayal pass in shadows, or show the truth and risk whatever storm might follow. I thought about the years of swallowing small insults. Every time Rachel suggested I was too old to handle this house, every sigh when I spoke at family dinners, every dismissive look when Jacob hugged me tightly as if she wanted to pull him away. I had let it slide. I told myself it wasn't worth upsetting Michael. I convinced myself that keeping peace meant keeping quiet. But the doorbell camera had changed everything. It wasn't just my word against hers anymore. The proof was undeniable, caught in crisp audio and video. That afternoon, I had practiced in my head what I would say to Michael. Would I hand him the phone quietly and ask him to listen? Or would I speak boldly, demanding that he finally see what I had endured? The thought of confrontation twisted my stomach, but one thing was certain. I could no longer carry this weight alone. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke my thoughts. I looked out the window and saw Michael's familiar truck, headlights glowing against the darkening street. My heart tightened as he climbed out. Behind him, Rachel stepped out too, her phone in hand, her expression as calm as ever. To anyone else, she looked like the picture of a devoted wife, but I now knew the truth that lay beneath that mask. When the door opened, I stood in the living room waiting. "Hi, Mom," Michael said, dropping his keys on the table. Rachel gave me her usual polite smile, the one that never reached her eyes. "Good evening, Elaine. I hope you had a nice time at church," she said sweetly, as if she hadn't nearly stripped my home bare that morning. I forced a steady voice. "Michael, I need to talk to you. Both of you, actually." Rachel tilted her head, feigning concern. "Is everything all right?" I nodded toward the sofa. "Please, sit down. This won't take long." Michael looked puzzled, but did as I asked. Rachel lowered herself gracefully into the chair, her eyes darting briefly to me, then back to her phone, as if she already had something better to do. My palms were damp, but I clenched the phone tighter in my hand, knowing this was the moment I had been dreading and preparing for all day. "Michael," I began, "there's something I need you to hear. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to listen for yourself." Rachel's head snapped up, suspicion flickering in her eye. "Elaine, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice just a little sharper than before. "I'll let the recording explain," I said simply. I tapped the screen, and the footage began to play. Rachel's voice echoed through the room. "She's gone. Bring everything. Start with the boxes in the living room." The sound of movers responding, the shuffle of boxes, and her commanding tone filled the air. Michael's face shifted instantly, his brows furrowing, his jaw tightening as he listened. He turned toward his wife, confusion written all over him. "Rachel, what is this?" he asked, his voice low. Rachel's lips parted, but no sound. For once, the smooth words she always found so quickly had deserted her. I pressed pause and looked at my son. "That was recorded today, while I was at church," I said calmly. "She thought I was gone for the morning. She tried to move me out of this house without telling you." The room grew tense. Rachel finally stammered. "It's not what it sounds like. I was helping." Michael cut her off, his voice firm. "Helping? By calling movers? By saying, 'Bring everything'?" His voice rose with anger I had rarely seen in him. "This is my mother's home, Rachel. What were you thinking?" Rachel sputtered, searching for excuses, but her silence earlier had already betrayed her. Every word on that recording had painted the truth more clearly than I ever could have. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was defending myself. I wasn't pleading to be believed. The truth was there, undeniable, playing out in Michael's own living room. I leaned back slightly, my heartbeat finally slowing. I had been terrified of this conflict, but now I felt a steady calm settle over. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to argue. The recording had spoken louder than any words I could have said. That night, for the first time in a long while, the power shifted. I wasn't the weak one in the room. I was the one holding the truth. And Rachel, the moment the doorbell footage playing, the room was silent. The sound of Rachel's voice still seemed to hang in the air like smoke that refused to clear. Michael sat frozen, his eyes fixed on the darkened screen, his jaw tight, his hands clenched together, as if he were trying to steady himself. I watched him, wondering what he would say, wondering if this was the moment he would finally see what I had lived with for years. Rachel broke first. She leaned forward, her words spilling out quickly. "Michael, it's not what it sounds like. You know how your mom I was just talking to the movers about reorganizing some of her things, that's all. She's making it bigger than it is." I could feel my chest tighten, but before I could respond, Michael turned to her. His voice was sharp, firmer than I had heard in years. "Reorganizing? Rachel, you literally said, 'She's gone. Bring everything.' That's not reorganizing. That's clearing out a house." Rachel's face flushed. She tried again, her tone softer this time, almost pleading. I meant we should help your mom transition. She's always saying the house is too much work. I thought if we got a head start, it would be easier for her." I spoke then, steady and calm. "I never asked you to move a single thing, Rachel. Not once. This house is my home. It's the only place I have left of my husband. And you tried to take it from me while I was at church." Michael's eyes darted between us, and I saw the pain in his expression. He loved his wife, but the evidence was too clear to deny. The recording had done what my words never could. It showed him exactly who Rachel was when she thought no one was watching. Rachel's voice sharpened again, her mask slipping under the pressure. "Elaine, you've been clinging to this house for years. It's too big for you. You can't even keep up with it anymore. I was doing what needed to be done. We could have sold it, moved you somewhere smaller, more manageable. Why can't you see I was trying to help?" Michael slammed in the coffee, making both of "Help? You call sneaking behind my back and trying to move my mother out while she's praying at church help? Do you have any idea how cruel that sounds?" Rachel opened, but no word. She shifted uncomfortably, her polished composure. I felt my throat, but this time, not with fear. It was something closer to relief. For years, I had wondered if Michael would ever see the small cruelty, the quiet ways Rachel tried to push me aside. And now, finally, the truth was playing out in front of him. I reached for Michael's hand. "Son, I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you or cause a fight between you, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. I would have lost everything. I would have lost my place in this family, and I couldn't let—" Michael's eyes softened as he gripped my hand back. "Mom, you don't have to explain. You were right to show me. I should have listened sooner. I should have paid attention." Rachel's voice cracked then, her calm exterior gone. "So what now? You're going to take her side? You're just going to ignore everything I've done for this family?" Michael turned to her, his voice heavy with anger and disappointment. "Taking my mom's side isn't ignoring what you've done. It's finally recognizing the truth. She's my mother. This is her home. And what you tried to do is unforgivable." Rachel sank back in her chair, speechless. For the first time since I had known her, she didn't have a defense. She didn't have a way to twist the story. The doorbell camera had caught every word, every order, every attempt to erase me. The weight I had carried for years seemed to lift in that moment. I had been terrified to show the video, afraid that even with proof Michael might still defend her, might still choose not to see. But as he sat there beside me, his arm protectively around my shoulders, I knew the truth had finally broken through. Jacob padded into the room just then, his small voice breaking the tension. "Grandma, are you okay?" He looked from me to his parents, sensing the heavy silence. I pulled him into my lap and kissed his forehead. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I said softly. And for the first time in a long time, it was true. Michael looked at Rachel, his expression hard. "This ends now. No more lies. No more games. My mother deserves respect, and if you can't give it, then you need to think about what that means for us." Rachel looked away, her eyes glistening, her lips pressed tight. She had no reply. That night, the house felt different. The walls that had witnessed years of quiet humiliation finally held something else: justice. The truth had been spoken, not by me, but by a simple camera at my front door. It had recorded the betrayal I couldn't put into words, and had given me back my voice. For the first time in years, I felt safe again, not just in my home, but in my place as Michael's mother and Jacob's grandmother. The house was quiet after Rachel finally left the living room that night. She didn't storm out or slam the door, but she walked away with her head down, her silence louder than any argument she could have made. For years, she had been the one with the sharp tongue and the dismissive comments, always controlling the story. But now, with the recording echoing in our minds, she had nothing left to say. Michael stayed with me long after she went upstairs. He sat at the kitchen table, running his hands through his hair. "Mom," he said softly, "I can't believe she did this. I can't believe I didn't see it sooner." His voice was heavy with guilt. I placed my hand over his. "You're my son. I never wanted you to be caught in the middle. That's why I stayed quiet all these years. I thought if I endured it, if I swallowed the pain, it would keep the peace. But peace built on silence is not real peace." He nodded slowly, tears shining in his eyes. "You should never have had to carry that alone." That night, Michael insisted on staying over. He wanted to make sure I felt safe. Jacob, who had been listening from the hallway earlier, came and curled up on the sofa beside me. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "Grandma, don't worry. I won't let anyone take you away." His little arms felt stronger than any wall, and in that moment, I knew I had already won the battle that mattered most. I still had my grandson's love, my son's loyalty, and my home. The days that followed were strange. Rachel avoided me, moving quietly around Michael and Jacob, her usual confidence gone. She had been exposed, not just to me, but to Michael, and that truth had broken the false power she once held. She didn't bring up the house again. She didn't make sly remarks about me being too old or too weak. She stayed silent, and though it wasn't reconciliation, it was at least a reprieve. My neighbors, who had noticed the moving truck that Sunday, stopped me one morning and asked about it. I simply said, "It was a misunderstanding that's been cleared up." I didn't need to humiliate Rachel publicly. The truth had already done its work where it mattered. Michael became more present. He stopped by more often, helped me fix things around the house, and even started talking about restoring the garden that my husband once kept. It was as though he had been shaken awake, finally realizing that I wasn't a burden, but a root, the foundation of the family he was trying to grow. Jacob began spending even more time with me. We cooked together, worked on puzzles, and tended to the small vegetable patch out back. One afternoon, while we planted tomatoes, he looked at me seriously and said, "Grandma, I'm glad you didn't stay quiet. If you had, maybe I wouldn't get to come here anymore." His words hit me harder than Rachel's insults ever had. They reminded me that when we speak the truth, it's not just for ourselves, it's for the people who come after us. I had always thought silence was strength. I believed that holding my tongue was the way to keep dignity, that avoiding conflict was the only way to keep the family together. But the doorbell camera taught me something different. Dignity doesn't come from swallowing pain. It comes from standing firm when someone tries to take away what is rightfully yours. The truth doesn't need to be shouted. Sometimes it only needs to be played back, plain and undeniable. As the weeks passed, life began to settle again. Rachel remained distant, but she knew the line had been drawn. Michael's loyalty was no longer in question, and my home, my safe place, was still mine. The chair by the window where my husband once read the paper remained exactly where it belonged. His tools still hung in the garage, and his presence still filled the house. Rachel hadn't been able to erase any of it because the truth had stopped her in her tracks. Looking back now, I see the gift in that little piece of technology I had once thought of as just a convenience. The doorbell camera didn't just record who came to my door. It recorded my salvation. It caught every word, every order, every bit of cruelty that might have been brushed aside had it only been my voice retelling it. And in doing so, it gave me the chance to defend myself without screaming, without begging, without losing the grace I had always tried to keep. If you've ever been pushed into silence, if you've ever felt powerless against someone who tried to write your story for you, remember this: the truth has a way of shining through. It may take time, it may take courage, but it will not stay buried forever. That night, when I pressed play in front of my son, I didn't just save my home, I saved my place in this family. I proved that even in the face of betrayal, the quiet voice of truth is stronger than the loudest lie, and I will never forget that lesson. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.